Ellis Island by Patricia Ron Quire. Moving families. Moving to a new place can be exciting. The thought of making new friends and going to a new school is exciting, but it can also be frightening. Many questions go through the minds of people who move. What will the new place be like? Will I make new friends easily? Today, families often move to different cities and different states. Some families even move to different countries. In the late 1890s into the 1900s, many families from Europe decided to move to the United States. Europe was very crowded. Many of the people were very poor, and some people wanted religious freedom, others wanted political freedom. They left relatives, friends, and jobs to come to the United States. Such a big change was frightening for them, but they felt life would be much better if they moved. They had heard wonderful stories about life in the United States. The people who decided to leave their countries to settle in the United States were called immigrants. Many immigrants thought that the United States was the land of riches and opportunity. A rough journey. The immigrants crossed the Atlantic Ocean in steamships. It was a difficult journey. Most immigrants had little money. Saving $10 for one steerage ticket took months, sometimes years. Steerage is the basement of a steamship. Imagine spending 3 weeks in a cold, crowded, dark basement. That's how long it took to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Other immigrants were luckier. They had enough money to buy first or second class tickets for the upper decks of the ship. These people were able to see the Statue of Liberty as they came into New York Harbor. The Statue of Liberty was a symbol of hope and freedom to the immigrants. This statue, located on what was then called Ellis Island, greeted the millions of immigrants who entered the United States over the years. First and second class passengers were asked lots of questions on the ship just before entering the United States. Steerage or third-class passengers had to go through a more complicated process before being allowed to enter the country. They were taken by barge onto a small island called Ellis Island. On Ellis Island, these immigrants had to face questions and medical exams. Sometimes immigrants had to wait several days on the steamships before getting on the barge. That was because there were so many immigrants coming into the country. Ellis Island. Hundreds of years ago, American Indians went to Ellis Island for oysters and clams. They called it Kiosk or Gull Island because so many birds hunted the oysters. Over the years, the island had many different names. In the 1770s, a merchant and fisherman named Samuel Ellis became the owner of the island. It was after Mr. Ellis that the island was named. The name stuck through the years. Many years after Sam Ellis' death, the island was taken over by the United States government. The government used the island as a place to store ammunition. The island was also used as a place to execute pirates. On April 11, 1890, President Benjamin Harrison signed an important paper stating that all ammunition should be removed from Ellis Island. The island was going to be the new immigration center for the United States. Its location in the New York harbor was perfect. The federal government built a beautiful, large wooden building on the island. This building would process the thousands of immigrants who came through the United States every week. Ellis Island opens. The Immigration Center on Ellis Island opened on January 1, 1892. More than 2,000 people came through on that first day. It was there that immigrants would find out if they would be allowed to stay in the United States. The very first immigrant to be registered at the new Immigration Center was an Irish girl named Annie Moore. She was 15 years old. Immigration officials gave her a $10 gold piece prize for being the first to pass through Ellis Island's doors. The next 5 years, thousands of immigrants passed through the Immigration Center. Annie Moore and every other immigrant had to go through medical exams and questions. The immigrants had to wait in long lines. The Immigration Center burns. 5 years after the Immigration Center opened, a huge fire raced through the wooden buildings at Ellis Island. The water around the island was too shallow for tugboats to put out the fire. The buildings burned to the ground. Luckily, no one died. The immigrants had been taken safely off the burning island. Ellis Island's Immigration Center was rebuilt. This time, iron and brick were used to construct the buildings. Landfill was used to make the island larger. By this time, Ellis Island was 17 acres or 7 hectares. The new main building looked like a beautiful palace. Other buildings included a kitchen, a dining room, and a hospital, a bathhouse, and a laundry building. The Isle of Tears. Going through Ellis Island was an experience that no immigrant forgot. The process usually took 3 to 5 hours. When the immigrants went into the main building, they dropped off their bags in the baggage area. Sometimes the baggage area was so full that people lost their belongings. Next, they went up to a large staircase. They get to the Great Hall, or a registry room. When they finally got upstairs, doctors checked them for diseases. The medical examiners wanted to make sure the immigrants wouldn't bring any contagious diseases into the United States. The doctors also wanted to make sure that the immigrants were strong and healthy enough to make a living in America. If a problem was found, the immigrants' clothing was marked with a letter. H meant heart disease, X meant mental problems, E meant eye problems. If a disease could be cured, the immigrant was sent to the hospital on the island. If immigrants passed the medical exam, they were given a legal exam. This was a bunch of questions. They were asked if they had money for a train ticket. They were asked where they came from and where they planned to go in the United States. In later years at Ellis Island, immigrants were asked if they could read and write. If they passed the legal exam, immigrants were given a landing card. This meant they could enter the United States. They went back downstairs and they could exchange their foreign money and they could buy a train ticket if they needed one. There was a post office on the first floor. There was also a telegraph office. Finally, the immigrants picked up their baggage. They were ready to begin their lives in the United States of America. Some immigrants were not allowed to stay in the country. These people who had contagious diseases or would not be able to prove they'd be able to support themselves in the United States. Some members of a family were allowed to stay while others were sent back home. About 2% of the total number of immigrants through the years were sent back to their original countries. That was about 250,000 people. That was why Ellis Island was sometimes called the Isle of Tears. 12 million people were processed at Ellis Island. Nearly 40% of the people living in the United States today had immigrant relatives who went through Ellis Island. Immigrants came to Ellis Island from many countries, including clockwise, from top right, the Ukraine, Romania, Finland, and Guadeloupe. Ellis Island closes. In 1921, Congress passed a new immigration law. It limited the number of immigrants allowed in the United States. It also limited the number of immigrants allowed in each country. This was called the quota system. The number of immigrants coming into the United States dropped greatly. Because of this, Ellis Island was no longer needed. On November 29, 1954, the federal government closed the island. Over the years, the buildings became ruined. Ellis Island stayed empty until 1965 when President Lyndon B. Johnson put the National Park Service in charge of the island. A new museum. Ellis Island had been a symbol of the American dream. It represented hope and freedom. Millions of courageous people came to the United States in search of a better life. These immigrants built the United States a powerful country. Because of this, the government decided to make Ellis Island a national monument. Millions of dollars were spent fixing up the island and its buildings and turning them into a museum. On September 10, 1990, the Ellis Island Immigration Museum opened. The museum educates visitors about the immigrant experience. It is a self-guided tour that includes movies, many exhibits, artifacts, music, and photographs. The United States has been a nation of immigrants seeking the American dream. For some, Ellis Island was the Isle of Tears, but for a great majority, it was the Isle of Hope.